The Twisted Mind of Monkey D. Luffy.
Monkey D. Luffy. As you may know, the man known as Monkey D. Luffy has recently been named an Emperor of the Sea. And as the youngest
Shit,
person
this
to
is a
ever
spoiler
achieve
for
such
me.
infamy, and in such a rapid fashion, he stands as a unique obstacle to our world government. Monkey D. Luffy's range of influence has extended far beyond what we thought was possible, even more so than the heavenly demon himself. His connections to the Revolutionary Army through his quote-unquote brother, Sabo, and his father, Monkey D. Dragon, make him
this guy's
truly
the
a threat
GOAT.
to the safety of our world. Even our very own Reverie, a testament to the unity of all of our kingdoms under the world government, was sullied by people claiming to be subordinates of
Luffy is so chaotic that to the point that he can destroy the world, if you think about it. He can destroy all the structure of society.
Straw
So
Hat Luffy, alongside a certain traitorous
yeah, I like
Celestial
Luffy.
Dragon, who was
I think Luffy's
manipulated
cool.
into assisting them in their goal of undermining the world government's authority. This man who has committed great evils, such as killing the illustrious Dr. Vegapunk, or freeing thousands of heinous criminals and Impel Down, has somehow cultivated a loyal following of retainers all around the world. Just who is Monkey D. Luffy?
How can you not like Luffy? This is so great. This is
What
why I
makes
like
him
Luffy.
tick? And how has this absolute villain grown to become the man he is today? But most of all, I'll show you why it's imperative that we stop this criminal before it's too late.
Yeah, thinking about
Not
it.
much is known about the
If Luffy decides to be evil, or if he decides to have an ego like Kanye's ego, I don't know
circumstances
how
of
dangerous
Monkey D.
Luffy
Luffy's
could
birth.
be.
We know his father is Monkey D. Dragon, but that's essentially all we know. Whether or not his mother is alive is still unconfirmed, and all attempts to find an answer have reached a dead end. However, through our investigation, we've been able to uncover many things about Luffy's childhood, and just how this unorthodox childhood, to say the least, has created one of the most enigmatic figures in our entire world. The first few years of Monkey D. Luffy's life were turbulent, to keep it brief.
I think this is a great way to educate your child. Put your kid in the forest, and if he survives, he's a great
His
man.
father's affiliation with the Revolutionary Army, Luffy
Yeah,
went
that's
through
it.
multiple
That's how we
caretakers
treat
in
them.
his younger years. The first of which being the hero of the Navy, Monkey D. Garp.
Man, my son, I'm gonna put that kid in Antarctica.
Though being
and
around
he's
such
gonna
a great
have
man
to
like Garp would
find
undoubtedly be a
his
great
way
influence on
out.
any young man, it unfortunately appears that Garp's effect on his grandson was not wholly positive. From what we've been able to gather, Garp clearly loved his grandsons, but his methods were destructive. It's been
I think this
reported that
is a sign of affection.
Garp would allegedly hit Luffy and his brothers Ace and Sabo with closed fists, sometimes infused with hockey, and they began receiving these punishments as
Man.
early as 5 years old. Though
He
Garp's
could like destroy the kid's skull.
intention no doubt was to whip them into upstanding men of the Navy. These parenting methods have created an animosity between the two that apparently still persists to this
Yeah.
day, further pushing Monkey D. Luffy into a life of crime. Because of Garp's career as a Navy man, he was unable to consistently be there with Luffy and be his primary caregiver. Due to these circumstances, prior to meeting his adopted brother, Portgas D. Ace, Luffy had quite a lonely childhood, with the negative effects of this upbringing only being compounded by the fact that Monkey D. Luffy is known to be a very social person. And this desire for connection has followed Monkey D. Luffy throughout the rest of his life. Though he, Ace, and Sabo are now known to have an inseparable bond, their
Yeah,
relationship...
I think Luffy's a great friend, and to be honest, Luffy has the greatest moments of friendship that I've seen in anime
Like
ever.
many of Monkey D. Luffy's relationships began
So
as
yeah, I think he's
exploitative
cool
and abusive.
because if you compare that to Vegeta and Goku's friendship, that they're just two sociopaths, and
the
Luffy is
moment Luffy was
nice.
introduced to another kid he could get close to, he made it clear.
I have a theory that Vegeta and Goku are two
that he would
psychopaths.
stop at nothing to get Ace's approval. And this dynamic, I think, is at the core of what Monkey D. Luffy is. His first encounters with Ace would become a microcosm for all of his relationships going forward. As Luffy would chase Ace around and try to gain his favor, as expected by someone who has dirty blood, Portgas D. Ace would lure the younger boy into trap after trap, many of which involving dangerous wild animals that could have easily snuffed the boy's life. And it's through these experiences that I think we start to see the creation of one of Luffy's most prominent character traits, his fear of abandonment. And it's all because of his fear of abandonment
Yeah.
that Luffy began to develop some of his manipulative
Yeah, fear of abandon.
practices that he's used to gain his loyal following.
love
You see,
that.
on one occasion, Luffy, Ace, and Sabo incurred the wrath of a local pirate group, the Blue Jam Pirates. And for many reasons, mainly Luffy's
What
own
a fuck-
incompetence, he was
fucked up
taken by
design.
this group and eventually held hostage and tortured for information. Due to Luffy's intense desperation for friendship, he refused
remember
to give
this.
away the two boys, finally endearing himself to them and cementing their connection. I believe this interaction taught Luffy two things. One, to make friends, you must be endlessly persistent, even if these people apparently have no desire to
Man, I was like that in my life. Like, to me, if I want to have a friendship, I have to be like so annoying so they start liking
to
me.
befriend you. If he desires
No, I don't.
something,
I'm not like that. I don't try to have friends.
especially another person,
I'm too egocentric to search for friends.
Monkey D. Luffy will obtain that person no matter what protest they may offer. But this also taught him that to make friends, you must go above and beyond for them, bend over backwards, and do things that
Yeah,
they
that's
most
the
likely
problem.
would
That's
not.
the real problem here, because you think it's cool when you sacrifice yourself for your friends and you do the best you can to have friends, but in reality, man, I don't make effort to eat. You think I'm gonna make an effort to a lame ass friend? No, fuck that.
Do for you, creating a strange combination of selfish and people-pleasing tendencies that has culminated into the most subtle form of manipulation that I've seen in all my years of study. And if these were his only influences, it would still be possible for Monkey D. Luffy to become a contributing member of society. But unfortunately, there were still multiple other influences and occurrences that were touchstones of Monkey D. Luffy's childhood and further molded his personality, one of which being his life living with mountain bandits. To say these people raised Luffy would be far too
This is my parental figure.
of a term. Luffy was allowed to live under their roof, but he was to be responsible for obtaining all of his own resources, whether that be clothing or food or water. This undoubtedly cultivated a sense of independence in the young man, but also bred his desire to seek guidance elsewhere. The most unfortunate thing about Luffy's childhood is that all of these other circumstances, including his loneliness and his lack of parental guidance, made him a prime target for the man who would actually send him down the path of infamy.
Man, thinking about that, every figure to Luffy is fucked up.
Red hair.
So yeah,
Shanks.
the guy's not okay.
Prior to meeting Ace, one could say that red-haired Shanks is the closest thing Luffy had to a friend, which is unfortunate.
And Shanks is like one of the greatest wanted guys in the world. So he's like a pirate, he's like a criminal, one of the biggest criminals, and he's the
Because Shanks was clearly
biggest
intent on
figure
molding
to
Monkey D.
Luffy.
Luffy into the
So
man we see
yeah,
today.
Luffy's great. I love Luffy.
Per the
That's
pattern
it.
that we discussed earlier, Shanks and Luffy's relationship was questionable at best. Shanks would poke and prod the boy, presumably in an attempt to breed some kind of competitive nature within him. And while this tactic may have worked, it also instilled Luffy with some worrying behaviors. The boy began to lash out and display self-destructive behaviors, even resorting to self-harm as an attempt to get Shanks' attention. Shanks did instill in Luffy his sense of loyalty, also inadvertently priming Luffy to develop his own form of manipulation that we talked about.
I think the only weird thing about this is the creature that it's Shanks' arm is a creature that it's so fucking weak comparing to the other creatures in this world. Like, not so long after this, Luffy beat a lot of those creatures. So it's strange.
But most importantly, the most prominent thing
But,
Shanks instilled in
yeah,
Luffy was an
you
insistent
can have your
desire
theory
to
about
prove
that.
oneself, which eventually would become the driving force leading him to become a pirate captain. Our records of how much time these two spent together are inconsistent, but what we do know is Shanks fed Luffy the and left
What?
Windmill Village shortly after, clearly displaying that his job here was done and his plans were fully in motion. The final event from Monkey D. Luffy's childhood I'd like to discuss is the supposed death of Sabo. Though now we know that Sabo is unfortunately alive and well, the belief
What? Unfortunately, I love
that Sabo
Sabo.
had died bred a deep fear within Luffy. The fear of those around him dying. A permanent abandonment that represents
Oh man, this scene. This hurts. This hurts, man.
everything
I don't like to see this scene.
that Monkey
This
D.
hurts
Luffy
me.
tries his hardest to avoid.
This is traumatic.
And now that we've thoroughly examined the impetus of these behaviors, it's time to show how these things have manifested in Straw Hat's adult life. Starting with the most easily observed, Luffy's fear of abandonment and fear of death. There was one point in Luffy's life where these fears
Yeah,
were
he's the
truly
only one with fear of death.
tested, and it nearly broke him, causing
is
him
a
to
new
disappear
fear.
for over 2 years. And it all began on Saboti Archipelago. Straw Hat Luffy took it upon himself to halt the traditional practices of the
The
Celestial
best island.
Dragon,
The
even
best
doing harm
island
to one of
ever.
our divine beings and defending a filthy fishman in the process. Naturally, for crimes as severe as this, the entire Straw Hat crew was to be executed by Admiral Kizaru. But instead, due to a confusing turn of events, they were spared and separated by the warlord
And I know
Bartholomew
this-
Kuma. And as seen in Bartholomew
That Luffy's gonna meet Kizaru.
Kuma's
Oh, he
transmission
met
footage, Monkey
Kizaru
D. Luffy's
already.
reaction to this was strange. It's almost as if he reverted to a childlike state. Unable to handle the reality of his situation, he resorted to his childhood tendency of harming himself as an attempt to display his desperation. As for Luffy, it's been displayed time and time again that this is the only way that he can get other people to sympathize with him and help him.
Man, this episode is so great. I think this is one of my favorite parts of One Piece. I think everything since that part, so the Marineford, everything is perfect during
These
this
fears
part.
were further pushed
I
when
love
Luffy
this
discovered
part.
his brother, Portgas the Ace, was to be publicly executed for his father's and his crimes against the world government. And regardless of how much Fire Fist Ace deserved this punishment, it's obvious that any brother or friend or family member would be devastated to hear news like this. But one thing we can all agree on is that every friend would not respond the way that Monkey D. Luffy did. In an attempt to save his brother, Straw Hat broke into Impel Down and incited a riot and eventual breakout that freed thousands of heinous criminals onto the street.
Man, he frees so fucking weirdos. There's that giant creature. I forgot his name, but he's like the biggest giant, and that Luffy frees. And that guy, I don't know how that guy was in prison because I think he's bigger than prison. But that giant is so bizarre.
Some of which include Katarina Devon,
I love One
Vasco
Piece.
Shot, and many more of the
It's
newly
so
minted Blackbeard pirates.
disproportional.
Our very own Impel Down Warden Hannibal described Luffy as having the persistence of a demon, fighting his hardest to break out the Impel Down prisoners, even as Hannibal pleaded to him for the sake of the citizens of our world. Luffy then went on to fight in the Paramount War alongside the Whitebeard pirates, in which he caused numerous Navy casualties and nearly succeeded in freeing Portgas the Ace. However, his failure served as a realization of his deepest fear, the loss of another brother.
I think the Marineford, this battle is one of the greatest things in anime. It's so great.
It could be
It's
said
really,
that after
really
this
good.
event, Monkey D. Luffy was never the same. He began to display far more destructive capabilities and showed a far fiercer determination to accomplish his goals, possibly as a way to dispel his failures of the past. As I mentioned earlier, Luffy's fears and insecurities have caused him to develop a very specific form of manipulation that he's used against multiple of his crewmates at different points of his life. Early on in his career, Straw Hat used this precise manipulation in order to gain a navigator for his crew, Cat Burglar Nami. Details are scarce, but it appears prior to joining the Straw Hats, Nami was forcefully employed by Arlong the fisherman.
But it's not like she was having a great life before that. Like, it's not like he's forcing her to be in his crew and she had a great life and Luffy said, no, you're gonna be a criminal with me. No, she had a fucked up life. She was a fucked up person and Luffy helped her.
It was an extremely complex situation with many moving parts, and Nami did not want Straw Hat to intervene, lest he threatened to ruin everything that she had worked for. But when she tried to explain these things, for Luffy, they fell on deaf ears.
And I think this is my favorite One Piece scene.
He didn't even take the time to hear
when
her
he puts the hat on Nami. I think this is like my favorite scene in One
story
Piece.
out. For him, the minute I determine you're going to be a member of my crew, you are mine. It doesn't matter your past. It doesn't matter what you happen to want
those
or
guys
what
are so
you would
cool.
like me to do. You are now mine.
The guy's just smoking a cigarette. Let's fight those monsters.
And
Yeah,
I will
Sanji's
do anything
great.
to acquire you. Ultimately, we can predict that Arlong and these creatures were up to no good anyway, so for them to be taken out by Straw Hat Luffy is of little consequence. But this displays a pattern of the pirate ignoring other people's wishes in order to obtain the things that he wants, as well as using their personal struggles as a way to endear himself to them and gain their loyalty. Nami is not the only person Luffy has done this to. Many of the Straw Hats showed no interest in joining the crew prior to Luffy solving some giant problem for them. And following this process, they feel not only indebted to Luffy, but they feel as if they've developed a connection to him, despite spending next to no time actually interacting with the man himself. The people that have been roped in by this process include Cyborg Frankie, the Demon...
Yes, Luffy is destroying every society that he goes, but every society he goes is fucked up. Every island is really corrupt, and he destroys the political system of every island he goes. But I don't think that's bad because, like, Doflamingo's island was so disturbed.
Child, Nico, Robin,
yeah.
as well as the entirety of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. But the final form of manipulation I want to show you is possibly the most blatant that you've ever seen. Blackleg Sanji, who had been separated from the Vinsmoke family for many years at this point, was to be brought back into the family to be married to Big Mom's daughter, Charlotte Pudding.
Yeah,
it was
this
a
is a
mutual
baddie.
agreement between both parties, and it seems Blackleg and Pudding hit it off. But of course, Monkey D. Luffy could not accept the loss of
There's nothing we like more than three-eyed girl. When a girl has 3 eyes, oh my god, I love girls with 3 eyes. I fall in love with girls with 3 eyes all the time.
This kind. And instead of allowing Blackleg to move on, he chased him all the way to Whole Cake Island, where he proceeded along his line of manipulation that he usually uses to get his way. First, a brazen display of desperation in order to incite sympathy for his struggle, followed by an attempt to destroy Sanji's struggles with his family in order to
Yeah, this is my favorite couple. Kiss.
That loyalty that he once had. But when all of those things failed, he proceeded to describe Sanji's importance to him and his ultimate goal of becoming the Pirate King, and then informed Sanji that if he did not come back to Luffy, instead of just moving on, Luffy would instead decide to starve himself to death. A very clear example of emotional blackmail, but one that ultimately worked out in Monkey D. Luffy's favor. And ultimately, that process has repeated throughout Monkey D. Luffy's entire life. His methodology has not only been able to garner him a loyal crew, but has also allowed him to charm entire nations, increasing his influence massively. And I fear,
man, if you look at his face now, like, this is a face of someone who could be a fucking psycho.
His influence,
like, what the fuck, bro?
Massively. And
yeah, this looks evil.
I fear if we do not stop this man, his manipulative charm will eventually infect the entire world. And surely nobody wants that, right? If you
yeah, this guy has a crazy mustache. This guy has a really crazy mustache too.
Do want that, just inform me and give me all of your personal information, and I'll make sure the world government sorts that out quickly. So yeah, I guess Nami's is a bit bigger than Robin's, but nobody's is as big as Zoro's. But yeah, man, that's all I got for y'all boys today. Let me know what you think about the video in the comments down below, and comment Nakama.
I think Luffy's great. He may be a psycho, I don't know, but I love Luffy.